Okay, what we're going to do today is take a look at some standing pike flexibility drills to help upgrade your pike flexibility. So you might be wondering why we're doing standing pike instead of the seated pike. In this seated pike position, as we fold forward, gravity is not really assisting us or helping us move into the pike. Yeah, it's helping a little bit, but it's not going to help as much as in when we're standing and we're folding down into our pike position. We're getting a lot more assistance from gravity this way. So it's a much easier way to progress our pike, and it's gonna be more effective for a lot of people than doing the seated pike stretching variations. Okay, so the first progression I like to use is what's called a standing pike elephant walk. And the idea here is to gradually work our way down to being able to have our legs straight and being able to place our hands flat on the floor. If you don't have that flexibility yet, you're going to need an elevated surface. So we're going to stand with our feet together. We're going to push our hands into the elevated surface. Obviously, knees are locked here. And we're trying to close this angle between the belly and the thighs. Okay, so we're pushing down. We're going to bend one knee and bring the knee up towards the armpit. And then we're going to straighten the leg and then bend the opposite leg. So each rep starts with both legs straight, and then we're just bending and taking these alternating steps. As we do that, the hips sort of move across just to help get a bit of a stretch in the hamstrings. As flexibility improves, we can lower the elevated surface, take our steps, and then we get to a point where we can place our hands flat on the ground and we can take our steps in this position. Now we don't want to have the hands out here. We're working to a position where the hands are just in front of the toes, and you can comfortably do those elephant walks in that position. So that's progression number one, working to that level where hands are flat on the floor and you can get both legs straight with those standing pike elephant walks. Okay, so with the elephant walks, if you're not yet at the level where you can get your hands flat on the floor, then I'd suggest you're doing sort of 3 to 4 sets of 20 alternating reps there and gradually trying to work lower and lower in each set. If you've got your hands to the floor, maybe this is a good warm-up drill. You could put this at the start of the session, do 2 to 3 rounds of 20 alternating reps just to get the hamstrings freed up a little bit and prepare you for, your pike flexibility session to come. Okay, the second progression I like to work on is what I call a squat to pike, elevated, weighted. So you're going to need an elevated surface to stand on, and you're going to need a weight. This could be a kettlebell, a dumbbell, a weight plate, whatever you want to hold. But the idea is the weight shouldn't touch the floor as you're moving between the two positions. So in this one, we're actually going to start in the sort of squat stance. So feet are wider. We're sitting down in that squat, chest up, nice and tall. And then we're going to move from this squat position towards a pike position. Now, as we do this, we're again thinking about the connection of the belly and the thigh, and we're trying to drive the knees back to a position where we start to feel a good stretch in the hamstrings. If you start to drive legs back and this angle starts to open, it's really not what we're after here. We're actually trying to keep that connection and just work the range of motion that you have. So if I grab the weight, I'll show what it looks like. I sit in that squat, feeling that connection. I'm starting to drive the knees back. I'm still connected, still connected, still connected. Here I start to feel a really good stretch. I'm going to hang out here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then I'll come back into the squat. Take a breath and then go again. Driving those knees back, maintaining that connection. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And again. Each time I might be able to go a little bit further as I start to stretch those hamstrings. I can lean the weight back and feel that, or I can start to lean the weight forward and try and figure out what gives me the best sort of stretch through my hamstrings as I hold that. And then I move back to the squat there. Now we can use, obviously, the core compression muscles. Using those hip flexors, those abdominals, we're actively trying to close that angle by contracting the muscles on the anterior side of the hip to pull us more into the pike, while we're lengthening the muscles on the posterior part of the hip. There's no real target here to aim for. Like, we just want to be improving the pike flexibility and learning how to close that angle. As flexibility improves, you're going to be able to get deeper and deeper down with that weight. Maybe you'll be able to touch the weight to the floor. So you could use the floor as a target, a lower incline step. And I find this one is something that we can use throughout our pike flexibility journey. It's a really good one, this squat to pike elevated weighted exercise. Okay, so squat to pike holds. What I'm looking at here for most beginners is we're really going to start with about 5 repetitions with a 5-second hold in each standing pike, or the best pike they can get to. You're driving the knees back, finding that stretch, holding for 5 seconds. And then I'd also typically add a 5-second hold in each squat so they hang out in the bottom of the squat. Now, as they start to progress with this, what we're going to do is we're going to start to increase the hold times. So we might be doing 3 to 4 reps where we're sitting up and we're actually doing a 10-second hold in this knees back position, coming down into the squat, just taking a breath and then going again. What I really like about the bent knee to straight leg variations is when we're in the bent knee position or when we're in the squat, it's actually taking tension out of the hamstring and out of the adductor, and it's allowing the pelvis to tilt forward a little bit. We're in this sort of anterior pelvic tilt. And then as we move up, we want to try to maintain that anterior pelvic tilt. And that's why we're keeping the angle between the torso and thigh closed as much as we can. If we allow that angle to open, typically what the pelvis does is it starts to move out of that anterior pelvic tilt more towards the posterior, which is going to still offer a stretch in the hamstrings, but not so much in the deep pike position that we want. We want to start to train that anterior pelvic tilt. And if we're just limiting that because we're opening the angle between the thigh, we're still getting a good hamstring stretch, but it's not going to be anywhere near as deep as if we're sitting in this position, fighting to close that angle, getting the stretch through the hamstrings, but also starting to learn a lot more about the core compression, the contraction of the muscles in the anterior side of the body to fight to close that angle. Okay, so bent knee to straight leg offers that opportunity for us to not only stretch the posterior chain, but also start to strengthen that anterior chain a little bit more. So one of my favorites is the squat to pike or bent leg to straight leg variations in our pike stretching. Okay, just a quick side note for those of you who might be looking for a program to help improve your forward fold flexibility and core compression strength. If you jump on the website, you can download this program for free. It's got a number of phases in there that's going to take you from a pretty basic level of forward fold flexibility and core compression strength to a pretty moderate level. Okay, I'm not going to say it's going to get you your full pike, but it's got some great progressions, easy progressions in there, a number of different phases that you'll follow for 4 to 6 weeks. And I guarantee that you'll definitely see the benefits in both your forward fold flexibility and in your core compression strength. So check it out. Okay, the next one I like to use is a forward fold to target. We're going to start by just standing and pressing our hands into the floor. So you've already built the capacity to touch the floor here. Now with this one, again, we're trying to close the angle between the torso and thighs. So we're contracting those quads nice and tight, and then we're going to actively push down into the floor. So pushing hard and creating this contraction, trying to push the floor away. We push for 10 seconds, then we relax and come back out again. As we're pushing, we're trying to suck the belly button in and we're trying to increase that forward fold. So again, pushing, trying to bring nose towards the shins, actively pushing into the floor. Now, if this is easy, we can start to elevate the feet. So here is a 5 kilo weight plate that I'm going to stand on. Again, might start with the fingertips, but then when I actively contract and push down, I'm pushing those hands flat into the floor again, and then coming back out, doing multiple reps. If that's good, you might go to the 10 kilo. In this case, I'm going 10 and 5 kilo. So again, this position, let's start with the fingertips, pushing, coming back out, taking a breath, and you do 3 to 4 reps of like 10-second contract and push. Again, it's all about sort of closing that angle. So we're thinking about sucking the belly button in, trying to lift the tailbone up. We're getting a good, strong anterior pelvic tilt there. And like I said, you don't want just your fingertips touching. You really want to be pushing down into a hard surface. So find a level that allows you to do that as you perform the contract and pushes in this exercise. Okay, so when I'm working on the standing forward folds to target, I might start someone out with 3 to 4 sets of 4 to 5 repetitions. Each one of those repetitions is a 10-second active push into the floor. Now, rest in between that is totally up to you. You might take just 1 or 2 breaths. You might have 10 seconds. Either way, as long as you're getting those 4 to 5 reps of 10-second contract and pushing down into the floor, you're doing pretty well. We can start to increase the hold time, but if we do that, we want to lessen the repetitions. So as an example, maybe you'll do a 30-second push into the floor, and that would just be 1 repetition. So experiment with it. Obviously, the more reps, the shorter that time will be that you're contracting and pushing into the floor. The lower number reps start to increase that contraction and push into the floor. Okay, the next one we're going to use is going to be going back to the squat to pike, but this time we're going to do it standing on elevation and having a stick under the elevation that we're going to hold on to. So now I can bring the feet together here and I can hold the stick, and the stick gives me balance. So when I sit in the squat, if I was to let go, I'd probably fall backwards. From this position, my chest and belly are in touch with my thighs. So then now I can start to move into that pike shape, holding onto the stick, which is allowing me to pull myself deeper into that pike. So I can use my upper body strength a little bit here to help improve the stretch that I'm getting as I move from that squat to pike position. Now, what I really like about this one is we can start with the stick sort of in line with our toes, but then as I get more flexible, I might move the stick back now to be under the arch of the feet. And then when I pull into that, it's going to help me close the angle even more. I can lean forward a bit here, and then as I come down, I might try and move the stick now back towards the heels, and then try and pull into that again. And now the brim of my hat is touching my shins, and I can come back into that squat again, have a little bit of a rest, reset that stick, pull against the stick, try and close that angle, brim of my hat touching again. I can gradually start to progress this by where I position the stick and using my upper body to help pull me deeper into that pike as I continue to work on closing the angle between the belly and the thighs and try to start bringing my nose towards my shins to close that pike shape even more. Really like this one. It's one that we can use, for beginners when they're not too flexible. We don't have to extend the knees fully, the same as the weighted squat to pike, all the way up to someone that's getting really close to being able to get their nose to shins in their standing pike. So for this one, anywhere between sort of 3 to 5 sets, you might be doing sort of 10 reps where you're just sort of going up and down, maybe pausing for 3 seconds in the pike, or you could start to push this out where you're doing sort of 10, 15-second holds in the pike and only doing 3 to 5 repetitions. So it really depends on where you are in your pike development, how many repetitions you do there, and what's going to work best for you in terms of the sensation and what you're feeling as you work through the squat to pike position, where the stick is, how intense that is. So play around with it. 3 to 5 sets, anywhere between sort of maybe 3 to 10 reps, and depending on the hold times. The less reps, obviously the greater the hold time in the pike, the more repetitions bring that hold time down just a little bit more. Okay, so this one is a little bit next level. We're going to start to load the squat to pike a little bit more. We're going to use the barbell here, and we're going to hold the barbell behind us as we move through that squat to pike. So you can see how the squat to pike elevated with the stick is a progression towards this one. As we start to get better at that and we move the stick further back, we're progressing towards being able to hold the barbell. Now I'm going to take a palms facing forward grip on this one, lift it up, move my feet to the back of the box here, and then I'm sort of in this little bit of a squat position, and I'm closing the angle again between my thighs and torso, and then from here I'm going to start to push the leg straight and try to fight to close that angle, reach the arms down, let the weight pull me deeper, and then I can rest, take a breath,
reset, and then go again, pushing back, closing that angle, reaching the arms down, and then coming out. When I finished, shuffle forward, put the barbell back down in that one. So this is a nice deep one. What I like about this one is it's also pulling us backwards. So it's helping to close that angle. When we're standing on the step and we've got the weight in front of us, it's a nice stretch that's pulling us down and forward for the pike, but I think it's got its limitations in terms of how it's going to help us close the angle. It's going to be beneficial to a certain point in the pike, but then we actually want to start to think about, okay, now I need to move my head and torso back towards the thighs. So although reaching forward is good and it gives us length, we want to start to think about how can I reach behind us. So the elevated stick under the bench progresses us that way. Then once we've got the barbell behind the heels and we're reaching down, it's really helping pull us deeper into that pike. For this one, I think it's just go by feel a little bit. I'd start with low repetitions, maybe 3 to 4 sets. You're working maybe 3 to 5 repetitions, 10, maybe 15-second holds in each pike if you can. And then you could gradually start to build that up, hanging out 30, 60 seconds, 1 repetition, as you really start to get closer to working on that standing forward fold or standing pike, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so there's 5 standing pike variations that you can use to start to upgrade your pike flexibility. These are not the only exercises I would be using. There are a lot of variations we can use to help improve calf flexibility, hamstring flexibility, unlock the glutes and the hips, especially hip internal and external rotation if you're very tight around those hips. We also have to think about the anterior side, so we can train the tibialis anterior, we can train the quadriceps as knee extenders, we can also think about training the deep hip flexor muscles to help increase the strength of the force that we have on the anterior side that pulls us deeper into the pike. So add these into your program. It's always good to video these from a side view to get a perspective of where you're currently at, and then train them for 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks, and then video again and compare, those videos to see that you're making progress. If you're consistent with your training, consistent with your pike flexibility, you should see in sort of 4 to 6 weeks that you've made progress. If you're not making progress with the exercises that you're using to train your pike in that period of time, then maybe you're using the wrong exercises. You're not pushing yourself enough in terms of your stretching, and you need to start to modify that program to start to increase the intensity or increase the variation that you're using to improve your pike flexibility. Anyway, I hope this little example of 5 different standing forward folds or pike folds is useful. Leave a comment below if you're going to give any of these a try. Give me some feedback, let me know how they go, and best of luck with your pike flexibility training.